I think we'll welcome back. I think some people are still networking intensively outside, and they will join us certainly later. We are now here in the second or third part of our morning program, and it's a debate. This is, of course, the time for debates. If you look on national television, there's almost a debate every evening from particularly people who have the ambition to lead this country. And the nice thing is I'm not allowed to vote here in these elections, so I can really look at it unbiased. But when we planned this program, we thought it would be very nice to have a debate, particularly with representatives from political parties who are really representing the young generation, the new generation, the future, because this is probably the generation that you are part of. Some of yourself are students, are active in politics, and it's probably something that relates also more to the student population of universities. So we're very grateful that you, aside from your other obligations, came to Maastricht to join us. Thanks very much. Just some housekeeping rules. I heard there's a rumor on Science Guide that you shouldn't say everything you think here in Maastricht because the Limburgers are strange people. I don't know why. Please feel free to, and that's really, it's something for everybody. Just be free to say whatever you want, share your opinion. We like a good debate here in Maastricht, and we have no hard feelings. The second thing is that we have this in a general theme in English, but you always can let's also ask questions, say something in Dutch if you feel more comfortable, do it. We can handle that. That's a bit what I want to say. We have 1 hour reserved for this. I will have the difficult task, and I'm not trained at this. I didn't get any emails so far. That I have to talk with you, talk with the audience, and we sometimes have on the screen some questions or comments from Twitter, so I hope I can manage that. And I think we should start to give each of you the opportunity to shortly introduce yourself. You're either from a party or a student organization, and maybe give something you want some statement where your organization stands on higher education. Give some opening statement shortly, and then we start the debate based on that. So we start with Willemijn.
Thank you very much. Hi everybody, my name is Willemijn Boskema. I am a board member of ISO, het Interstedelijk Student Overleg. We are a student organization on the national level, and we try to represent and defend student rights in politics and so on. Concerning the theme of today, higher education and internationalization, I would like to state the following. And firstly, let's say it fairly, higher education in the Netherlands is quite okay. So what we try to do is to make sure that the quality will increase more and that there will be more focus on the connection between education and the labor market. So far, ISO. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joost van den Akker. I'm the political leader of the VVD group in the Limburg Parliament. Thank you very much for the invitation. As I'm just in Parliament since a year after studying here at Maastricht University, I am in a way also learning in leading, so I hope I can also acquire some skills. But the central message on behalf of my party, so just before the elections, to you is actually that studying is not only a right but a privilege also, and that actually it's up to representatives and up to politicians in connection with business and education to set the new stakes and to reform, which means that education and university should not only be based on and its financing not only be based on the number of students but also on its quality. And therefore we need a big reform. And we are willing and we want to take the responsibility to take that lead, but also that the connection with business and the economy is better here in Limburg. So the investments also the provincial government makes for Maastricht University are not only just to strengthen education, but also the employment in this region.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hans van de Heuvel. I am the board member, political affairs of the Christian Democratic Youth Appeal. And I would like a statement about international education. En daarom schakel ik nu over op het Nederlands. En waarom doe ik dat? Dat is hopelijk niet omdat ik dezelfde Engelse kwaliteiten heb als Emiel Roemer, maar dat zal uit het debat nog moeten blijken. Maar ik doe dat omdat internationaal onderwijs, dat begint, denk ik, en ik denk ook dat de Universiteit van Maastricht dat goed in de gaten heeft, in je eigen omgeving. Ik liep hier binnen en toen hing er een groot bord waarin de Universiteit van Maastricht zichzelf eigenlijk presenteert. En er staat ook dat het een universiteit is uit Nederland, Limburgse bodem. Dutch Limburg soil staat er. En daarmee maak je de link naar je eigen wortels waar je vandaan komt. En pas als je je eigen wortels kent, if you know your own roots, you can make the step to international education. And that's what for my party is very important. You must first know yourself. And if you know yourself, you can make the step to international education. And that would be my statement.
For that still.
So here's a budget color already. My name is Lucas Orda. I'm the political secretary for the Young Socialists, which is the youth organization of the Labour Party, Social Democratic Party, for those who don't really know Dutch politics yet. Concerning education, I think there's two things I really like to say here. And one is that education should not be some kind of a stamp machine in which students enter and they're molded into something which can be put on the labor market as soon as possible. And I don't think that's much of a problem here at the university, but at other higher education institutions, so the Dutch HBO, it appears as if students are only sort of market fodder, future labor commodities, so to speak. And going to college, going to university, studying, it's an exercise in self-development, and it's an exercise in getting to know your own talents. I mean, we've just seen a speaker present on how workers, how employees can learn their own skill sets, learn where they fit in, and that's something which you should already be done at a university level. And that's not only done in college, but that's also done in connecting with with research institutions, but also with companies, with employers already. And that's the other part. While it's a self-development thing, I mean, and that's something I really say to the students here in the audience, you are the engine of our future durable and innovative economy. I mean, investing in education is not so much only investing in the quality of the students, but also in the future entrepreneurs, in the people who are going to get us out of this crisis and get us into durable economy. So investing in education is investing in the economy at large.
Good morning, I'm Kai Heineman and I'm the chairman of the Dutch Student Union, LSVB, Landelijke Studentenvakbond. And the point I want to make is that we have a great education system here in the Netherlands, and I think there's two things that are that we do really well, and that's first that it is of high quality all around. We don't have one top university like Harvard, but we do have a lot of universities that are among the top 500 in the world. There's no university in the Netherlands that's in the top 10, but all around we have a good quality of universities here, and that's something that we should be more proud of. So the quality is good, but it can get even better. So that's one of the first points of our that we want to make. We're a student representative. I'm not a politician, but that's something that politicians sometimes seem to forget. And the second thing is that the way we get there is because in the Netherlands you can study if you have the intellectual capabilities. If you are up to the task to study, then you are able to do so. And it doesn't matter if you're from a rich family or where you come from. If you have the capabilities, then you can study. And I think that's something that we should keep in mind, that is what brought us here, and that we need to keep it that way. And that also means, in an international perspective, that if someone has the capabilities to study, it doesn't matter if they come from the Netherlands, if they come from Belgium, or if they come from Greece. If they, and I say that last thing because recently it's been in the news that more people from Greece have come to the Netherlands to study here. And I think we should be more open and should invest even more in outward, but also in students coming to the Netherlands.
Good morning still. My name is Joanneke van der Veen. I'm the chair of Dwars, which is the political youth organization of GroenLinks, the Green Left Party of the Netherlands. And I think for us, education and higher education as well is a very important means of emancipation. It means that you can learn what you're good at and have a good starting position to further, live your life. So for us as well, it's very important that access to education is not dependent on how rich you are. We really want to maintain the system as well that allows everybody to get a very good education at the level that fits them best. And in that perspective, I think also internationalization is very important, because international studying can also give you opportunities to learn things that you maybe wouldn't have learned in your home country or not have learned as well. Also, I think there's a lot of topics that are very important to deal with internationally, because they don't remain within the borders of one country. For example, sustainability matters, nature, but also very other topics. So I think internationalization is very important, and we should keep it financially accessible for everyone.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Suzanne Schilderman. I'm in the National Board of the Young Democrats. The Young Democrats is a political youth party linked to Democrat 66. We have a social liberal vision on how the world should be. And we focus mainly on Europe, on personal freedom, and on education. So, as you might expect, we're very fond of more integration of the Netherlands in Europe, but also in our educational system. I think we are a very good country, especially if you look at our educational system. It's very accessible, it's very good, and I think we should take it a step further. We can specialize in some things, and some other countries can specialize in other things. So we're very fond of that. At least in Maastricht, a lot of studies are in English, and we're very pleased with that, because we mainly talk English, and that's why I talk English. And some people feel differently, but we are very progressive in this matter, and I hope you feel the same way.
Okay, thank you very much for these opening statements. And now we start the debate, and it's also up to you and our anonymous Twitter friends to contribute to it. But maybe I start to warm up, ask you a first question. We talked about the higher education area, we talked about internationalization. The Netherlands is in a situation that it has a lot of international students. A lot of these international students come from neighboring countries. A lot of these neighboring countries is Germany. Is that a chance? Is that a threat? There were some discussions what this means for the Dutch taxpayers, and what can we learn from this? Maybe that is something, a very relevant question also for us in Maastricht. And then, again, please give us your opinion. Yes, Janneke. Oh, you're Janneke, sorry. My glasses are in my pocket.
Accidentally, I was in a car yesterday with a friend of mine, and I was doing the stemwijzer with him because he wanted to find out what to vote. And then there was a question about new housing in the Netherlands, and he said, well, yeah, but there's a lot of international students that come to the Netherlands, and they live in the houses, and they use like the studiebeurs and the money to study. No, it's not a loan, it's a gift. The grants, yeah, thank you. The grants that the Dutch government gives to them if they take a job. So he felt a little bit awkward about this, because he thought, they take our money and what do we get in return? But I think it's a very good thing in principle that students come here, Dutch students go elsewhere. I studied in the United States for a couple of months, so it was very helpful for me. So I think we should encourage this, but maybe, and I'm just gonna let up this balloon, to use nice Dutch phrasing. We should look into harmonizing the financing, thank you, of higher education in Europe, because I can imagine that if the system in Germany is very different from the Dutch system, this might lead to some problems, maybe, or uneven situations. So I think. Internationalization, we should encourage this, and it's not bad that a lot of Dutch students, German students come here, but maybe we should find a way to even this out. I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to the other side. Huh,
Just a few months ago, this spring of this year, there was a research done by the government because they had the same worries. There is a lot of international students coming into the Netherlands and not so much going out, or at least there was a disbalance in that. And it showed that even if 2.0% of those international students stayed to work here, it would be beneficial for government finances. However, we must always keep in mind that we have to encourage those students to look at our labor market. What can they do here? What is here for them? Instead of, hey, I'm going for the Netherlands to study there because I don't have a place to study in Germany. We must always look for integration of those students. Concerning German students specifically, there is a huge connection between the Netherlands and Germany when it comes to economics. And one way to enhance those bonds between those two countries is to make sure that they can get in touch with each other during their educational years.
Joost?
A few years ago, when I studied in Munich in Germany, the first thing that the German university offered me was a German language course. And although I spoke German already, I didn't have to take it, but the reason that they offered it made it very accessible for me also to work in Germany next to my studies. So I think that it's a very good reason that, and student organizations have strived for that over the last years, that also Maastricht University as a first offers free language courses for all the students who come from abroad. And that's not only for just that they can find their way around, that you can find your way around, but it's also that you are able to stay. And as the provincial government, for example, is investing millions, tens of millions of euros in new education programs in the sciences program, also for international students, because there is a shortage of technical skilled people, it's important that those students stay and don't go back to Germany, for example. If they go back to Greece, partly, to rebuild their country in a way that's more financially more stable than it was, probably that's also in our benefit. So it's not just that everyone should stay, but at least we should do more economically than has been in the past.
Okay, Jannik. Yeah.
I would like to ask a question to, I guess, both of you, because I both heard you say, like, people, when they come to study here, they should focus on labor market here. Do you think, as a principle, that people who come to study here should be focused on staying here to work on the labor market? Or do you think also it's just good that people go abroad to study and it's okay if they return? What is your goal with education? With receiving international students?
Yeah, the principle, of course, is that they study because they like the study program and they want to get their degree. That's the principle. And if then the opportunities are that good in this region, so attractive, living circumstances, wages, international connections, recognition of diplomas. I very much liked the presentation which the Dean Schneider gave this morning about the social security and the pension system. If you can regulate those things as a government, it's actually simply you leave still the choice to the student itself, but at least you invest more in the economic development of the region.
Yeah, sure, but what would be your goal with receiving international students? Would you want them to stay here, or is that not the goal?
Yeah, but it's part of the goal. It's not just internationalization for internationalization. Internationalization is a means for student mobility to create that you get the different mix of students everywhere.
Okay, we go here further, and then let's have 3 more short statements, and then I'll involve the audience, because you're great debaters. We have experienced it already last night, but we like to stimulate also the interaction. Yes, let's go along this road.
Yeah, what I think is important that you don't create a lot of barriers for people to study. So you should treat an international student equally to a Dutch student, and that's what I'm concerned about. The current government says we don't want, we see it as a problem if too many international students apply for a Dutch grant, and they are looking now to create all kind of barriers for international students on getting that grant. One of them is that they need to work for more hours a week to be able to get the grant. A second one is that they want to limit the amount of grants you can take outward to another country. So right now, everyone that has been in the Netherlands, the European Court has ruled if you've lived in the Netherlands and you study abroad, you can take the grant with you. There was a law that you should be living 3 out of 6 years in the Netherlands, but the European Higher Court says you cannot do that. That's illegal. And now what may happen is that there will be a limit to the amount of grants that can be used to go abroad, which will limit the amount of students that can afford it. And secondly, they're even investigating if it's possible to make sure that you can only keep the grant if you stay in the Netherlands. So you're kind of trapped. If you take the grant, then you have to come back to the Netherlands and you have to work here, because otherwise you have to pay back. And I think that's kind of barriers that especially the Liberal Party, the VVD, tries to impose, that are really endangering the international project.
But it's still a nice country to be here. We agree on that. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, I think Lucas, did you have a statement? Or then I would wrap it up to really go to the people who have burning questions.
Yeah, I think, of course, I think we also have to make sort of differentiation between the type of students and the amount of time they spend here. I mean, there's a lot of people here in the audience who are probably going to get their bachelor's degree here in Holland and are probably also interested in getting to the Dutch labor market. But then coming back to your statement here, we should not have internationalization just for the benefit of the internationalization. I'm not so sure that is not true. I mean, the quality of research while in university and the quality of research exchange between different types of students benefits the quality of the university per se. It doesn't have to necessarily be in service of the labor market or in service of having foreign students come here and go into research programs beyond university. It should be focused on how to improve the research quality within the university. So in that sense, internationalization and getting so people doing their bachelor's degree here, but also lots of exchange students, which was what the study was about mostly, itself should be a goal, and not so much focused on how to get as much economic benefit of the people getting into this country. I mean, I think that's where the main difference is between what the Liberal Conservative Party is saying and what this side of the debate is saying.
Okay, I suggest some more short statements, very short, because really then I want to open it to the audience. Yeah.
Really short.
Yeah.
We've got a European credit system. We've got a hugely open labor market, so the ground is there for internationalization. But, and that's very important, we must also look how we can keep it affordable. And that's very, very important in this time. We must keep also internationalization affordable, and you can get that without imposing any limits on how it will work. That's very important if you look to the government finances.
Okay, so now in the audience, any questions, points, comments? No volunteers? Should we look at the Twitter debate account, if there are maybe some? Oh, there's one, here. Leo Beurdorf.
Ik doe het in het Nederlands, want ik praat veel slechter Engels dan al die bedrijven tegenwoordig.
Goed, fout.
Maar ik denk dat studenten in zijn algemeenheid straks toch zo'n beetje, zeg maar, in leidende posities terechtkomen in Europa, waar het nou is in Nederland of in andere landen. En ik zou eigenlijk gewoon een suggestie willen doen, want de Europese eenwording is gebaat bij mensen die over die grenzen heen gaan, die contact hebben met elkaar. Dat wij voor elke student die van buiten hier komt, er eentje aanwijzen die naar buitenland gaat. Want het is natuurlijk wel een heel slecht teken als Nederlanders niet naar buiten gaan. Als ze alleen in dat kleine kikkerlandje blijven studeren. Chinezen komen hier naartoe om hier te studeren en gaan daarna terug. Wij gaan niet naar China toe om in China te studeren en hier terug te komen. Dus we verliezen gewoon de economische slag in de wereldpositie.
So the question was mostly related to those who are not speaking the language yet, haven't done our language courses. What about the Dutch students going abroad? There are much less Dutch students going abroad than foreigners coming in. Is that maybe the issue? Who wants to comment on that? Yes.
Ik zal het Nederlands terug doen, omdat de vraag ook in het Nederlands werd gesteld. Ik denk dat het Ik denk dat het heel belangrijk is dat de liefde natuurlijk wel ook van beide kanten aanwezig is. En je kunt, ik kan me goed begrijpen dat er ook studenten zijn die om tal van verschillende redenen liever ook gewoon alleen van het Nederlandse onderwijssysteem genieten. Dat is al een paar keer aangehaald in de introductie. Dat is een heel goed onderwijssysteem. Dus ik zie daar ook helemaal geen kwaad in als je je primair focust op ons Nederlandse onderwijssysteem. En het zou natuurlijk vreemd zijn als je vervolgens studenten gaat dwingen om naar China of naar Griekenland te gaan. Ik ben er overigens wel voor dat je het stimuleert. En dat gebeurt gelukkig ook op veel universiteiten. Maar het moet natuurlijk wel ook een beetje vanuit jezelf komen. En anders heeft het ook denk ik weinig zin aan effectiviteit.
Yeah, I think I agree. You shouldn't force people to go anywhere. They should study somewhere because they think it's a good education for them, or if they want the experience. But I think there's not enough done yet to promote that. I think there's too much attention for getting students into the Netherlands compared to outward mobility. And it's good to have foreign students in the Netherlands, and it's good that there's a focus on internationalization in the Netherlands. But it's also important that we stimulate it even better, that there's a possibility to go outward. And I think especially if you look at in high school, it's not really promoted as one of the real options. It's usually you can go to this university in the Netherlands, you can go there. Maybe it's mentioned, but it's not promoted that much.
Okay, I'll take one more and then we go back. Yes?
Okay. Well, first of all, we should be very proud that so many international students want to come study here. And especially at Maastricht University, where we see a lot of international students. But I also see the disadvantages, of course. It's getting more international, but I think that will stimulate more Dutch students to go abroad as well. If they see the students here, the step can also be smaller to go abroad. But we should also indeed be motivated to educate them more about how to go abroad. We should also make it easier to transfer the degrees between different countries. And I think a very good step will be to go to a system where, at least in Europe, the degrees will be more alike. We started with a bachelor and master structure, and I think we can do a lot more with that. So we can mainly make it easier and make the prospect on a good job in either in the Netherlands or any other country to make it the same or even better. So.
I would suggest we go to another question. Here was one in the front. No? Yes?
There are not many questions from the audience, so I dare to ask my question, but I think it's more a question for really the board of the university. But anyhow, you're talking all the time about internationalization. We are first, we are having this and that. They come from Germany, from Belgium, from Greece. But I'm thinking about the young Dutch people living here, but coming from Morocco and coming from Turkey. I missed them at the university. During the period that I was teaching, I had I dare to say almost the best of my students that I was meeting were Turkish students that were doing medical study. But where are the Moroccans? I have been going here once to a lecture of Tariq Ramadan. It was full, crowded, and I looked down, only black-haired youths and young people, and he came with very smart questions. They were not stupid, but I missed them at the university. And all this talking about internationalization, I think, for instance, for you, the young people, university should anyhow find a way of getting more of those also at our international university, and maybe the young ones have a way of getting contact with them. Okay.
Okay. Maybe I should start answering it. Of course, the demographics in Limburg are much different than the demographics in the area of Rotterdam. That's why we have, from our, I would say, regional influx, a different population. But of course, we also have increased student influx from students from Turkey because we have a very good education system there. We also, as you probably know, have now more than 250 students from Saudi Arabia here at the university. So, but it's really people who come from outside to us rather from our region. But the demographics here in Limburg is different. That's why it was so surprising that the PVV got so strong, because it is more an issue in the Randstad than here. Okay. Okay, we take the suggestion. But here, we have some, Lucas maybe wants to say something?
Well, I have to say I completely agree. I mean, this is actually it's a huge problem. I mean, it's general participation of minority groups in higher education. Of course, it's not a problem which is limited to the Netherlands. It's also a problem in most European countries, actually. But I mean, I studied in Utrecht, and I mean, we don't have a deep demographic composition. I mean, it's very, let's say, multicultural city. So yeah, representation of especially Moroccan and Turkish youths in university is really below what it should be. And I think part of the problem lies in, well, it's been touched upon already, funding, which has to do with, most of these students' parents cannot afford, on the one hand, the fees, the tuition fees. On the other hand, they're supposed to sort of add to the student funding, so to de studiefinanciering, de aanvullende financiering vanuit de ouders. And they're pretty reluctant to do that. On the other hand, it's sort of a mentality problem. I mean, you're pretty much expected, if you go to high school as a Turkish or Moroccan youth, to end up in the VMBO, maybe to the HAVO, and maybe one or two of them will end up in the VWO, which also has its implications for how many go through with university. And there's an overrepresentation of actually pretty qualified, especially Moroccan students in MBO and HBO, which should have gone to university or are pretty capable of going to university, but very focused on getting a job and getting out there as soon as possible. So that's pretty much a mentality change on the part of the university and higher education systems, as well as on the part of those minority groups themselves.
Okay, we can take two more. Kai and Susanne. Yeah?
I want to quickly respond, because I think we should also look at the numbers, and you see that especially in University of Applied Sciences that more and more minority groups study there, and maybe universities are lacking behind a bit, but I think it will get better, and especially with the way we organize our education and the finances and with the grants, actually, especially University of Applied Sciences have been a motor of emancipation, and I think that's something we should be should invest in, and should be happy that that's the way it goes. And I think maybe in a few decades this will solve itself if we stick to that principle.
Okay, one more comment, and then we go to some questions back there, and then we go to Twitter. Yeah.
Well, I think there are different views between like Moroccan people who have a Moroccan background and people who, for instance, have a Dutch background. We usually go to the university to get a broad academic basics. You know, we go for the entire vision. Well, you're going to study at the university, and that's the main thing you learn. When you look at Moroccan and especially Moroccan girls, they study economy. I also study economy in Amsterdam. There are a lot of Moroccan and especially Moroccan girls there, because well, when you come from a different country where it's not that normal that everybody studies and only studying is enough, they want to see, well, what is useful. And I think they choose for some specific educations like economy, but you will see there that a lot of especially Moroccan girls study there and get very good grades and are getting very high educated. But they are the first group who is doing that. But I think there is definitely a progression in this.
So it's very encouraging. So we have a question back there, or who's the next one? We have one here, and then the gentleman here on the side. Yes?
I had two comments I would like to mention. The first one is the thing with the language courses. I really see a big problem there, because I'm from Germany. I do understand Dutch, but I can go shopping and stuff like that. But I would like to also could discuss in Dutch. And the problem there is that not in the timetable and not, you know, that it's for free, is really recognized by the university, I had the problem, because I really would like to make a language course, but honestly, there's not really enough time for it, because I would like to also have good grades in my courses, and if I would join a language course and would really try to learn the language by heart, then it would be really, you know, not very easy for me. And the second thing I would like to mention is that you said that the education here is very much accessible, and I would say it's not really, because the tuition fees are high in comparison to Germany. And for me, for example, I had to work the whole summer break, that I can pay the tuition fee for next year, and I really see there a problem, because for the Dutch students it's very accessible, but for the German students not really. And I really see there not a very big problem for the university, but for Europe as such, that education should be affordable for every student or every European citizen everywhere.
May I just ask, why did you come to study here and not in Germany? Just, I'm curious.
Because in Germany you can't really study in English. Only at private universities some programs are offered in English, and I'm studying European studies, and you know, it doesn't make sense to study something which really relates to an international background without studying it in English. And the second thing is, I never went abroad because we had no money for that, and so it's a great chance for me to study in English and to be abroad in a way. And the last thing was really the quality of the study program here, because it's way better than in Germany.
Okay. Well, something we have to look at, language courses?
Yes. Yeah? I think you just perfectly described what the benefits and the positive sides of the Dutch educational system are, but also the downsides. And the downsides is that we hear a lot of international students coming here for their entire degree, that is either bachelor or master's or both. And they specifically ask, when they come here, I would like to integrate, I would like to learn the language, I would like to know the culture. We do provide classes which focus on Dutch language, but the capacity is not always, at every higher education institution, not always up to a limit. There is more international students who want to follow that language course, but do not have yet the time during their semester, or do not have the opportunity before the semester starts. So that is something quite easily done to make sure that the international students will integrate more into our system. A really positive thing about the Dutch educational system is that the entire thing is in English, or can be given in English. Downside is also the added value of studying in the Netherlands is less. What do we want to achieve? Do we want to have a borderless educational system wherein studying in the Netherlands is just a coincidence, but where your educational program is totally borderless, a truly international classroom? Or do we want an educational system which is rooted in the Netherlands, which has bonds with several other institutions or companies from the Netherlands, and take a piece of integration aspects in it?
One more comment?
If I may, I'm glad that you are so positive about the general Dutch higher education system. Well, I already made the point about the language courses, which I think is something which higher education institutions can organize. The second thing is that I think indeed to connect more also foreign students to their perspectives on the labor market, whether abroad or at home or in the country where they study, is also that the companies are more connected to this region. And therefore I think also the Health Campus, Maastricht Health Campus initiative is very important to integrate more research, education and undertakings companies. And also therefore I think these undertakings can provide more scholarships for students, and university world is a bit afraid now of scholarships, because then they think the independence, the objectivity of higher education can be declined. But on the other hand, you can of course ask of the objectivity of the state and its financing system. But looking to the United States, looking to Britain, you say they are highest on the rankings and they make a lot more use of scholarships. So certainly for the integration of the Health Campus initiative, of which also the provincial government is investing some millions, I think we should make more use of scholarships.
If I may just say so, it should be said that this should be provided. However, it should not be obliged. You should give the opportunity, but not state you have to stay here. It is the same for the international student grants. It can be provided, but you cannot ask, you have to return. Because what will that do for students if they find an amazing job in China or in America and they have to say, no, I got to get back to the Netherlands because I have to pay back my student's loan and I promised them to return. That would be bizarre, especially for such a small country as the Netherlands. We cannot ask anymore in a globalizing world that the students will return because they have promised to, because of their money.
And maybe they are good ambassadors, even they stay away because
great
they have a
ambassadors.
relation to the Netherlands. I'm tempted to go now to Twitter because I've asked to go to Twitter. I haven't forgot you. And lots what say, eat well. That I think it's good. We have Feike Siemensma, and then is one. What is that? Is that the blue one that you suggest? 1x2 M. The barrier for foreign students to receive study financing may be raised from 8 to 14 working hours a week. What's your opinion on this? That we had briefly. International students have to work more. Yes, who wants to? Lucas.
A small recap on that.
Yeah.
International students can get the Dutch student grant called Basisbeurs if they work, and that was previously 8 hours a week, and that has been raised now to 14 hours a week. By doing that, they can apply for the Social Security. They raise this because it's a big investment. And that's also the reason why they needed more hours of work. And I think actually, seeing the investment Dutch government is making, 6,000 euros per year per student, is pretty much.
Okay, Lucas.
Well, you can turn around and say, how do you want your investment in students to pay out? And if I look at this proposal, I mean, your investment should be a high quality of international students who might consider staying here, contributing to research, contributing to the labor market. And I mean, I'd like to ask of all of the students, please raise your hand. Who's able to work for 14 hours a week and at the same time do a master's degree? I see 0 hands.
0, yeah.
0.
How many master's students are there?
Yeah, there are some students here, yeah.
Quite enough.
How many are international? Okay, Dutch. Okay, the rest is working, I guess. Okay.
But still, I mean, but still, I think the point is pretty clear. Obliging students to work for 14 hours a week, and also, I mean, we're talking about integration here, or learning the language, and making sure you get to know the labor market, making sure you get to know your research environment, which is actually pretty important, and also building up social life. I mean, those are all pretty important aspects of the whole self-development concept that is studying at university, and solely focusing on those 14 hours a week just to get, which is actually pretty measly, 250 euros a month. I think it's pretty absurd to keep raising that barrier. I mean, that again is only pushing students just to finish pretty quickly and get on the labor market as soon as possible, but that won't really produce the amount of academic quality that we want out of our international students. So,
okay, we go here to the two ladies. Oh, you want to say something too? Please do.
Just quick.
And the next round we go back to you.
There's something strange in this, because if you work for 14 hours a week, maybe you don't need the money anymore. But if you cannot work these 14 hours, you have a double problem, because you cannot work, so you have to loan more, and you don't get the grant. So there's like a double punishment in there that I don't think. Sorry.
Or a double win situation if you are able to do
but
it.
if you're
you
not
earn
able
more and you
to-
get the grant.
Yeah, but you don't. The point is, if you work that much, maybe you don't need the grant anymore. So the grant is there because you want people to study and do not be a financial barrier. And it should take away part of that financial barrier. It should be a way to do part of the investment. Of course, a student has to invest a lot himself too, but it's a way of making sure that that you can afford it. And if you have to work for 14 hours a week, actually you don't need it anymore. So it's a strange.
Okay, you have a direct response to that?
Well,
or?
actually, yeah, there are three things. You don't have to work, even if what my party proposes and the ones of Lucas Horda, is that we introduce the social loan system. And even if you introduce the social loan system, you can loan and with the expecting that you will pay it back when you work. And even if you are, at the end, after 15 years, not able to pay it back, it will be a grant of the state. So a second element of that is that we scratch the current rules on these limits of earning, because actually we think, yes, it's up to the student themselves to decide how to organize that, and even then we don't need the study delay fine.
Okay, we have you, Janneke and Susanne, and then we go to the next question.
Yeah, we will get into a very different discussion if we're going to talk about the social loan system, but I agree with Kai that it's kind of strange to say work more and then get extra money, because you're going to get double money, which is of course very nice for the people who do get this money, but not very necessary. Also, if you do have to work effectively for 2 days a week and you're supposed to do a full-time study, which is supposed to be full-time, I think you would have to have 9 days in a week almost. And this, of course, would lead to a delay in your studies, which would mean that you have to pay 3,000 euros extra after you have too much of a delay, which is going to be a double fine again. So I think this will get us into a very strange situation. So I'm not really in favor of this.
I think it's a typical example of something we can solve if we start integrating more in the European society. We can organize these things with each other. We don't need the, well, let's say weird Dutch rules to protect our universities. We can work together and make an accessible financing system so no country will suffer more than another and everybody can study everywhere.
Okay, last word from you, and then I really need to get back to the audience.
Well, it's a statement because maybe you think I am very silent if we talk only about the financial part of education. Of course, financial and the finance of education is very important, but I would like to make a statement, and it's a very important one for my party. And that's a statement, and I hope you will allow me to use a German word, because some words in German, and you would agree with me, I think, are better than some other words. That's the word Bildung. And the word Bildung, to make...
Bildung.
Bildung,
I thought
yeah.
you said Bill.
Nee. Not about finance this time. Bildung, that's very important in especially university education. And I think we talk too little about it. We talk about internationalization. We talk about finance. But we must also talk about Bildung, about what you get at university. University isn't just a machine that makes people ready for getting labor. University must be a building where you can get an institution where you can get a building for the future. And I think we talk too little about that and too much about money.
Okay, this is a good point for me. This is a good point for me because I will talk about this afternoon in the opening academic year. So we have the gentleman here, and then we have some students, I hope, here in the front. Yes? And I'm going to just ask one of you to give an answer because we're running out of time. Yes, please.
I'll come closer to the microphone. I'm a bit disappointed, coming back to the point of international students coming abroad to Maastricht, and so little students going from Holland to going abroad. I am an attorney, admitted to the Dutch bar and admitted to the German bar.
Or speak louder, yes.
Okay. So I am an attorney admitted to the Dutch bar and to the German bar. And I've been admitted about 17 years ago, I think. First 2-3 years, I had 2 or 3 colleagues also Dutch people admitted to the German bar. Then 10 years, I was the only one. Now I have, I think, 2 or 3 colleagues. The other way around, from Germany, there are at least 20 or 30 German rechtsanwälten admitted to the Dutch bar. So there is a huge disbalance. I knew that already, but I'm a bit disappointed to hear that this hasn't changed much, because at the age group of students, it still seems to be the same situation. My experience is that Dutch people think they are very international. They are, in fact, quite afraid of going abroad. It's far easier to come to the Netherlands than, obviously, it's probably as easy to go abroad, but the Dutch people generally just don't do this. So my remark or my observations are actually leading to a question, well, to the whole of the panel, but in particular as well to the chairman and to the university. Maastricht University is very successful in getting people from abroad. The theme of this day is networking. Maastricht is the hub, and you've made many spokes to the hub Maastricht. But what could the Maastricht University do to actually have this unidirectional, in the other way, to make sure that Dutch students actually go abroad?
Okay, I think, may I answer that? It is a point well taken. Of course, if you talk about internationalization, it's a two-way road. And we have a fact that more students or worknemers come here than the other way around. I think we can stimulate it by many ways, and we do that. We have recognized that. You know, some faculties, for example, if you look at SPA, if you do a Bachelor of International Business, all the students have to spend a semester abroad. If you go to the University College Maastricht, so you have to start very early also to facilitate that Dutch students go abroad, and we do that. But that's a very bottom-up approach. It will take years until it has an effect. The second thing is what Hildegard Schneider presented, that we really try to get think tanks to deal with the cross-border issues. But I agree with you, that's a big issue, and it will probably take some time to address it, but the point is well taken. Internationalization is a two-way road. Okay, there were some questions here. Yes, the third from the right from my side. Yes.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Right, yes. I have an English accent, maar ik ben gewoon Nederlander, dus even voor de duidelijkheid. Right, what I wanted to say is that the debate seems to come down to when we're talking about international students, when we're talking about the number of hours worked, preparing people for jobs, it comes down to the economy. Well, understandable, this to me is quite a worrying trend, because if we consider that the economy should be here to serve the people, but when you start directing the educational institutions themselves so that the people are there to serve the economy, you should really be asking yourself, how does this affect the morality in society? How will this affect the future generations? To me, this is an example of short-termism, what is best for, for the bottom line now, how we can slightly make things better tomorrow, but realistically, the long term, this is a very negative thing. Thank you.
I give the microphone to one person. Nee, dan de VVD? Wel, ze krijgen ze krijgen de meeste zetels. Hè? Ja, who wants it to? Kai or Susanne? And then next time I'll take VVD again, okay? It's a good question for VVD, then you should answer it. See? That's democracy.
Afraid of the answer already, but I'm really willing to give it. I think internationalization, again, is also something which has more to do with specialization. It was already mentioned by you. But then we are not thinking in terms of countries, but we should also think in terms of regions. And that very much connects to the previous question. So if there are not enough prospective lawyers who are going to study abroad, this has probably something to do with a European law from 1998, which is not implemented well enough. On the other hand, still a lot of internal borders which there are in terms of taxation, social security, and so on. And politics is also the art of network and the art of what is possible. And therefore, for example, what has been realized recently is a new tax treaty with Germany, but what we are trying to realize in the EU region, for example, is a new grouping of territorial cooperation where you can actually move these kind of borders away. And whether it is short-term or long-term, no, I think we have to look what our future demands of also the labor market are in this region. That is why our Maastricht University has been based here in the 1970s, and that is also that we are needed of highly technical skilled people, and that we need to cooperate more with Aachen University as well. And if that may be the case, that there is no Portuguese higher education in the Netherlands anymore because there are too few students and there is a very good education for that subject in Germany, then yes, we should mobilize, and those students who want to study Portuguese should to go to Germany, and that is not harmful for our future generation, I think.
Or Portugal. Hans.
And you are completely right. The university isn't a labor machine. You can get a good job if you go to university. But what's very important if you go to university is that you become a responsible citizen. Is that you can become a balanced person. There are far better ideals than to get you ready for a good job. And I hope that the universities will keep the mission to form people, which is a historic mission for the university. Will keep it, and in that sense, I completely agree with what you said.
Okay. No, any final statement on that? It's not allowed?
Not allowed.
You're not allowed?
I'm allowed.
You're allowed.
I think
no, I'm also liberal, but
okay.
not a liberal Democrat.
But I think it's true that there's a tendency to look too much on the short term and not on long-term perspective, and that there's too much focus on what things cost and not what education actually is. It's an investment which will, like every euro you put in education, will come back 3 times. And it's like this famous saying, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. That's even more expensive. So
that's a good one. Then we have another question there and here. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, you have to give it back. Okay.
Hello. A couple of times during the discussion, we're at that point that came
a little closer to your.
It came up that, well, everybody should be able, without any barriers, to study wherever he wants, or she, wherever he or she wants. I think the problem is there will always be these universities that will probably be more favorable than others. And then you have, let's take, not just Holland as an example, let's take Germany and Austria. In Germany, you got a limit. Let's say you want to study medicine, you have to have very good grades. And so a lot of people have
here
to
too.
go. Sorry?
You have good grades here too. It's not.
Yes, of course, but there are a lot of people who don't have the required grades in Germany, so have to go abroad. And there's a lot of people going to Austria, going to Holland to study there, making the people actually living there, making it pretty hard for them to study. But, yeah.
Okay, so it's more of a comment? Or
I think
a question?
Sort of
you have a question?
No, I'm just trying to say how you're going to solve the problem that maybe there's universities or countries where less people want to go than probably other universities where they don't have certain limitations or so. Because there's not many people staying in Germany to study a certain subject because they don't have the required grades, or I don't know.
Or because the educational system in Germany is a little old-fashioned, should we say? Huh? Could we agree on that?
For whatever reason, they might not want to stay where they are.
Okay, good. Here, we have a question here in the 4th row. Thank you for the microphone. Back. Yes.
My name is Rudolf Rijgersberg and I work at the law faculty. Well, there are a lot of connected problems here, but I would like to make a few remarks on 2 of them. And that is the costs that are related to the system and the foreign students that are, well, apparently there's a higher threshold and you have to be better at organizing things because you need to work more in order to pass your grades, in order to pass your years. What do you think of a bit of another approach that I haven't heard so far? First, there's to solve the money problem. Apparently, secondary school is not enough to pass, for example, a law degree or another degree. What do you think of a numerus fixus system for all types of studies? That's one question. To solve the problem that there are a lot of people who don't make it to the master level, which costs a lot of additional money as well. Why not invest in better students? I don't care if they're foreign or if they're Dutch. And the other thing is, what's wrong with investing in yourself as a student? Take responsibility. You know, my first degrees were in philosophy. I wanted to do that abroad. I had to finance it all by myself, which is not a problem at all because it makes you focused and more aware of the things that you want in life, also as a student. And in my faculty, the arts faculty, they said, look, what do you say to people who have an MA in the arts? Well, basically you say 2 French fries and a large Big Mac because people assume that you couldn't do anything or you couldn't achieve anything with that type of degree. Well, I disagree, but I think people need to be motivated, and you could do that by either a numerus fixus, get the best students into your university, save some money, or invest in yourself. Thank you very much.
Yes, and we can refer here also to a comment by Saibal Norda, the chair of the WSNU. En voor de innovatie die ons uit de crisis haalt, zijn veel goed opgeleide, ambitieuze jonge mensen nodig. And it's maybe less important what they study. It's really that they have this ambition. It's our contribution that we can bring them to a profession that's more than Big Mac and other non-eat well products. I think, I'm sure there are more questions, but there's also Twitter. I think we are actually, unfortunately, at the end of 1 hour of fame. I would like to, I mean, I've listened to some of these debates and said I was kind of depressed sometimes. But if I listen to your compliments that you are the future of your parties, your organizations, I'm then more optimistic. And it's also great that you take the time to do this at the same time you are threatened by langstudierte boetes and other things. And you still invest in your studies, but you also invest to be active. At the end of such a session, what you usually do, there's some level of maybe, there's a lot of questions asked, not all answers given. You usually ask a wise woman or a wise man to make sense out of all this. And today we're very fortunate we have the completely unspoiled new rector of this university who spends today his first working day with us, Luc Soete, and I try to convince him, I won't say by what means, to give us in 15 minutes your view on what we learn all of this, or what we could learn out of this. Luc Soete, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, my first point would be that if the higher education in the Netherlands is excellent or is okay, then for sure the young politicians emerging from this higher education systems are also okay. And I would say excellent. Of course, I have to say this with 2 representatives not being there from 2 parties who are on the extreme sides, who are not here and not represented here. So I'm saying this for the parties presented here and the people who have intervened here. I thought it was really fabulous to hear the way in which one can debate. And I don't know whether you have received any training in doing so. Maybe in your different parties, they train you to do these things?
They train us, but usually in Dutch.
Usually in Dutch. So this is quite an achievement and well done. The second point is really to say that this whole internationalization really illustrates that what I would call, and I would really refer to the students these days in Maastricht or wherever, and also to yourselves as the Maastricht generation. And the reason, of course, that they are the Maastricht generation is that they were born more or less in this spirit when the Treaty of Maastricht was, at least the first discussions took place in 91. The generation which also witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall. In other words, it's a generation who has known one Europe. I think Martin even me certainly has witnessed this continuous divide in Europe over the most of their young career as well as making a career at universities. There was always this divide. It certainly influenced us very much in our thinking, political, economic, cultural thinking. And you are the first generation really who's dealing with one Europe. And a Europe, of course, with the Maastricht Treaty, which has been a Europe of mobility. Schengen, we heard from Hildegard the importance, this process move of how this integration is going step by step further, at least with respect to the tradability of goods, services, and also with respect to the ideas mobility. And so this raises for me the first really big challenge, which I refined back in each of your comments, which is that we have an increasing European labor market, an increasing mobility of talent, whether at the level of students or at the level of researchers, and yet national systems of higher education. And the mismatch is pretty obvious in some of the cases we saw about the peculiarities of the Dutch system, which is, of course, pretty peculiar when you think of it. Providing study grants is, I think the Netherlands is the unique country in the world, actually, to have this kind of system. So you have a number of rules and regulations which were set up from a philosophy which was a Dutch philosophy with respect to access to higher education. And the issue is, of course, how do you maintain this within this European mobility environment? I think that's the first issue, and you see this reflected back in many of your comments, how you struggle with this, how can we adjust, what are the ideas? I think that the European trend is really one towards solving the mismatch between a European labor market and these national higher education systems. And where you see this very clearly is, of course, a little bit in relationship to the economics. Because whether you like it or not, students are pretty rational people, if you ask me. And if you are a Greek student, or you are today a Spanish or an Italian student, and you will start your study, and you know that after your studies, the probability of finding a job will be 1 out of 2, 50% youth unemployment, even in the levels of higher educated people, it's pretty obvious that you're going to say, well, let's look up north, and let's look, for instance, at a university such as Maastricht University. I will be there bilingual, at least Spanish-English or Greek-English. With a bit of luck, I will be integrating in terms of Dutch itself. My employment opportunities, the employability of the youth in the Netherlands is at a completely different level. It's the lowest in Europe today, maybe with the exception of Luxembourg. So the chances of finding a job even there are much higher than they would be back in Spain or in Greece. So what does a student do? A potential student will start to look at Maastricht, but also at Scandinavian universities, at British universities, etc. So I think we are witnessing today a transition that is that the Euro crisis is adjusting, so to say, in terms of higher education. Now, the question then is that what we want? Or what does it mean for European integration further? What does it mean for the crisis? What happens if we have a systematic talent drain out of the southern parts of Europe coming to our places, helping us in growing even faster, helping us to solve our technical problems, as you mentioned, helping Camelot in finding the engineers, the scientists, etc., which DSM and many other companies need there, and moving away from the southern parts of Europe. Well, this is what, as an economist, I would say, this is what international adjustment is all about. That is that the real economy, such as in higher education, will adjust. And this is the one way in which youth unemployment, as massive it is across Europe, will adjust to lower levels by simply the movement of youngsters and of talent. And this is really where I think we, as, of course, coming to Maastricht University, where we are sitting there and being to some extent witness of this movement and the increase in that movement, which I expect to increase very rapidly in the years to come. What does it mean to outward movement? Well, I agree very much with the idea that Dutch students are actually not that international from the perspective of moving abroad. But to some extent, it's in the logic of your story. If higher education is okay or excellent, why would you move to Germany if, as we've heard from our president, the German higher education system is still such a mess? Would you go to sit there and have ex cathedra lectures in German, etc., if you can have them here in small groups, if you have the self-motivation, etc.? So I think in this sense, there is a very, again, a logic in terms of the mobility that people from the Netherlands will not move abroad, that within their framework, they will say, well, you know, this is the system which fits very much with our needs. So I think if I, you know, I've taken lots of notes, of course, but then we come to very specific issues. But I think that from that perspective, there are a couple of points which I think were very interesting, also coming from the audience and from the Twitter. And that's, of course, to say that indeed, the economics and the economic employability should not be the only and the main driving force. I very much agree with the point made there. Studying, certainly at the higher education level, is much more. But of course, in this sense, the choice of the students still is the factor where we play very little influence, where students are free to choose the study, even being aware very much that with the study they might not find it easy to find a job. I'm just saying that as this is filtering down, you will see that students are becoming more rational in the sense of looking at some of those economic opportunities. But at the same time, the real talents will of course still go. Think of music, think of talent in terms of theaters or pure creativity. The real talent will still go undeterred by the lack of employment opportunities, by going somewhere because they believe that with their study, they will make it as individuals later on. So I think that choice is still essential, and it's still a main part in terms of higher education. But I'm going on too long. Let me just conclude to wish this Maastricht generation good luck in the next weeks. I saw on one of the Twitter accounts that you are the future political leaders in the Netherlands. I didn't say this. You all will be prime minister. This is an impossibility, except if there is a generation shift and but you know, at the speed at which Dutch politics changes every 2 years, you might well be right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Luc, for your wise comments. Indeed, it was a wonderful summing up of this morning session. A lot of the issues that we discussed this morning actually will come back this afternoon during our opening ceremony of the academic year. We will talk about the value of knowledge, and Frans van Vught will also give his vision on the Dutch higher education landscape, and so we hope we all see you there. And now we have a lunch break that is completely, again, under the motto, eat well, and that's what I wish you. Thanks again for coming to Maastricht. We enjoyed the debate. Thanks for coming here, and eat well.